Alright, camera says go. So, before I left the house, I got the Christmas tree thing that I put up yesterday, or put together yesterday. I got it set up in the yard, and since it had been in the garage, I had the garage door open, and I saw that there was one of the scrapers that I was thinking I should put that in the car, right? So I go to get it, and like as I turn around, there's an Amazon truck pulling into the driveway, and it scared the crap out of me because I was listening to music and wasn't really expecting it, and it's just like, it caught me off guard, right? Because I was sidetracked doing other things, and then there's this truck right there. And, so I go and I put the thing on top of the car, and then I go back so I can be available to take the package, and thinking that maybe she wouldn't have to get out of the truck or whatever, the van thing. But she did, and she said, "Do you mind if I take a picture of it?" Of course, that's part of the job, go for it, right? But I had this thought, this moment where I really wanted to say, "Can I be in it?" And like, just do something dumb because, my mom's going to get that in her email anyway, and I was there to receive the package. So I was just going to have, like, I don't know, probably go with my my go-to. But I didn't. So, she puts the package on the ground, takes a picture of it, and hands it to me, and then leaves. I'm having this whole thing in my head. It's like, at first it was like, yeah, that's kind of dumb. It's like, it is, but so what? It would have been fun. And to change up the freaking picture for, what my mom gets in the email, and that's always entertaining if she gets caught off guard by something that pops up in the email. So, but I did not. But then I spent the last little bit thinking about how I'd like there to be a little less of the gap in the thought pops into my head, and then, like the whole process kicks in, and then, by the time I'm more inclined to want to do it, then the moment's already gone, right? So need to work on shrinking the gap, I think, for doing the dumb thing, and, or feeling the urge to do the dumb thing and just doing the dumb thing, right? Been catching a lot of those, or my brother sends me a lot of those things recently with just, something about just say the impulsive thought or say the weird thing or whatever. It's like, yeah. But yeah, ever since then, I mean, that was like an hour ago, but it's just like, I really wish I'd have done that. Because yes, it was stupid, and yes, it was something, it was just one of those things that was like, because of the mood that I was in the moment, it would have been entertaining for me, right? But I didn't, so whatever. But I did get the tree put up and situated and plugged in and all that fun stuff. So as soon as it's dark, it'll be all nice and festive over there. It's like we don't unplug anything, so it's just kind of on all day, and then so you see it when it gets dark. So it works. I finally got my Snoopy pants, the Christmas pants that I was talking about selling. I finally got them cleaned and listed. So far I haven't heard anything. But they're Christmas, so I wanted to get them posted before Christmas, so maybe it's more encouraging. Somebody might want them in that time frame. Otherwise, I don't know. Could theoretically donate them, but on those, I'd probably be more likely to hang on to them and wait till next year. But I don't know. Hopefully they go, and it won't be an issue anyway. And hopefully my mom doesn't nose in the middle of everything and, start running her mouth about, why are you getting rid of those? Because I want to. That should be reason enough, right? So I've mentioned on here before that the Foot Locker that I've had since undergrad. I got it going into my freshman year, and it was one of those things. It's like, this is heavy duty plastic. It fit in the closet that I had, and like there's room to put a couple padlocks on it. And I don't think I ever did that because I don't think I had anything that important in it while I was in the dorm. But, you know, a few years ago I thought about selling it, and I mentioned it, and then of course my mom was like, well, if you don't want it, I'll take it. It's like, well, the point of me selling it is to get the money out of it, right? So it's like, if you stay out of the middle of that, then I won't have to worry about that. I could get the money out of the thing and not have the thing taking up space. I mean, I've had it for a long time, and basically what I realized when I moved back from Alabama was it was basically functioning the purpose of a junk drawer. And it's like, okay, so I started going through stuff. It's like, I don't need most of this crap. Why do I have it? Right? So I started clearing it out, and I will say that is one thing that I have appreciated the opportunity to have over the past few years is, you know, the time to occasionally get so motivated to start going through stuff and be like, I don't need this. Why do I have this? And get rid of it. But since the last time I mentioned that, she's like, well, I'll take it. It's like, what I should have said was, you can buy it, but you can't just have it, right? Because that's like always been the thing, is the assumption is, since I said the thing about possibly selling the thing and it's met with, I will take it, then she's expecting it to be gifted because, you know, she does enough for me, so why would I charge her for this thing that I'm trying to get out of my space? Because the point of selling it is to get the money out of it, right? But yeah, so okay, there's like a dude. I don't know if they were like waiting on me to go somewhere because I've just been sitting here, so anyway. Yeah, so I think, you know, I've been thinking about it because I set it in the room for her to use, and she never did. And what ended up happening was it ended up being just another thing taking up space. And so, yeah, he wants the spot. Hold on. Okay, and that's one of the times that gets really annoying because the guy was acting like he wanted to come through here, right? So I move up and go over the next road, you know, because he's, okay, so he turned down the next road and went over on the road that way and was looking over in this direction. So I move because, you know, I'm thinking that there's somebody through here that he's wanting to see the grave of, right? So I loop around and basically just followed where he went, and he went where he was slowed down and looked at me and started moving like I was in his way. And he's pulled up in that spot, which is like, I don't know, like 50 yards ahead of me. So it's like, I didn't need to move, but he was making it like this. See, and there's so many little side roads that if all he wanted to do was turn around, he could have done that somewhere else. But yeah, anyway, people annoy me. Anyway, so the whole freaking Foot Locker, I decided I'm going to, I was thinking I would just keep it. I did, you know, when she first mentioned that she would use it, excuse me, then I held on to it and I put it somewhere where she could use it. She never used it. So then I was thinking, well, if you're not going to use it and you just didn't want me to get rid of it, then I'll take it back. And so I put it in my stuff again. And, you know, I was thinking about putting like pictures and whatnot in it. because I have some plastic containers that, I mean, they're like the big plastic totes, but like flatter, not the real long flat ones, but flat. And I started going through some of those the other day because one of them just had like 6 different photo albums in it. And I have a lot of pictures that didn't make it into photo albums, so I was like, all right, so what do I have that's in the photo albums? And that was my journey the other day when I was watching Krampus. I was going through pictures, and I went through, of course, okay, I knew the Mickey Mouse photo album had band stuff in it. I remember that from that time frame. It was like 8th grade band stuff. So it wasn't even the one where we went to Disney World, right? So like that would make sense for the Mickey album, but it was just like 8th grade, and my first year in marching band, and I absolutely loved the freaking thing. So I had pictures. I take a lot of pictures, not gonna lie. That's always been something that I do, right? And now it's a lot more nature, and I don't really associate with people. But yeah, whatever. But I was going through the albums, and it's like I don't really feel an attachment to any of these, especially the one that was like sophomore year in the dorms. And of course, that was probably one of the biggest years for me trying to cram myself into the church shit. God. I had pictures. First off, the makeup. Obviously, I can do my makeup a lot better now. Back then, it was like, thinking the eyeshadow needed to stay right on the eyelid, which I have. I think people call it like hooded. So it's like my, there's not a whole lot of space for makeup. If you put the makeup just on the lid, then it disappears. And that was like the style that I had the entire time, was just on the eyelid, and then you could never see it. So it's like, and it's been the last few years where I've started realizing you can play around with it a bit more and it can look better. And honestly, roller derby was the thing that gave me the space to try weird looks as far as makeup went. Now, that said, in the drumline days, my junior and senior year in high school, it was kind of a bonding experience for all of the girls to get together and do like the black goth makeup kind of thing. So there were pictures from there, and of course, drumline stuff I'm more inclined to keep, because there's a whole lot from that I enjoyed those days, right? But then seeing like all this stuff where I'm like, it feels like I'm trying to cram myself into this space of being acceptable in these church ideology spaces, right? So Campus Crusade, and the Bible study that I was in the dorm, which, I mean, there were still some good times, and I enjoyed the people in that time frame. Although I did have one of them. We went to a Campus Crusade thing, and of course those were always huge, right? So we're at the auditorium, and she was a little ways away from where I was at. Like, I think I went later, and it was just a girl that I knew from the dorm, and she sees me from afar as this thing's wrapping up and people are leaving, and I think she called like all the attention to me just for everybody to sing happy birthday to me, and it was like not July. It was nowhere near my birthday, and she was like, the whole point was just her to have people turn their attention to me, and it was like, because I don't like that. Right? I've never been one to be big for having a lot of attention on me. That makes me uncomfortable. You know, and like if we go to a restaurant on my birthday and, you know, it comes up at the table that it's my birthday, then I am the one that specifically requests, can we not do the song? Because, I mean, first off, I don't like the song, but second off, I don't like the attention. But yeah. And I feel like there are other circumstances where that is probably more different now, but just in general, I've been prone to my hiding and everything, so not drawing attention to myself, so that was very uncomfortable. But anyway, so I have pictures from, you know, a bunch of the things I used to do back then, right? And one of my shirts that was clearly from the Family Christian store, whatever, and Jesus is Lord or whatever. It's like, that kid, oh. You know, just, and like okay, so that album had little lines next to the pictures, and I wrote little stupid things to go along with the pictures, and I was just like, oh, that kid. Right? It's like just seeing that old version of me, and knowing that I was trying really hard to be acceptable, and how lame so much came across, you know, in hindsight. It's like, there are some pictures, for the most part, like there are a bunch of pictures in that album that I was like, I remember this guy's face, but I don't know who he was. I remember he showed up, he was like a friend of my roommate sophomore year, and he was there. I don't know if they were in the same, I think they had a class together or something. I don't think they were necessarily in the same program, but they had some of the same, I don't know. Anyway, it's like I have a bunch of pictures that this dude's in, and I don't know why, because I don't even know his name. It was like, he was just around a lot, right? So that was weird. And I completely forgot about the freaking dance we had. That was for the, was it for the whole dorm, or was it just for our half of the building? I don't know. Because it seems like the number of people that were there, it doesn't feel like it was the entire dorm. So it might have just been our hall even. But still, like, some of the pictures and then some of the things that I wrote next to it, it's just like, cringe. You know, so I was going through, and it's like, there are several of these pictures that I might want to hold on to. The shit that I wrote, oh my god, I know. It's so cheesy and lame. So aside from getting names to remember who people were, you know, but like most of the girls in the, in the Bible study, I think I started going to the Bible study in the spring semester, and it was because fall semester I had done marching band, and that, I mean, it was less than ideal. It wasn't, you know, it wasn't what I was used to by any means, because it was definitely, you know, you're suddenly in the big leagues with people that actually know music and know how to read music, right, and all that kind of stuff, and it's like I wasn't one of those people. So then I went from playing marimba, which was like my favorite thing ever, to this college marching band situation, and I ended up marching cymbals because I couldn't read music to keep up with everybody that was learning. And it's like, fuck. So I went with cymbals, and the only time I ever marched, because I played pit in high school and 8th grade through senior year, I was always in the pit. The only time I marched was like in parades and stuff. And so to suddenly have to learn all that to hit your mark on the damn field and whatnot, that's not my thing either. Right? So it was like the only year that I did marching band, and I wanted to give it a shot because it was something that I had loved, and then I get there and it's like, I'm out of my league here. I don't know, like, most of these people that are doing marching band are like, actually in the music program. And that wasn't my thing. So, then I end up marching, and that also wasn't really my thing. But I tried it, and I made a couple friends that way. But then, once the whole band thing was over, there were a couple people that I stayed connected to for a little while, but not very many. And actually, one of those two is the guy that committed suicide back in 2011, and that whole time frame was kind of a weird thing anyway, because like my ex and I, the one that I thought I was going to marry, we were both working. We both had night shift jobs, and they were in the same town, but he was like, I don't know, like 3 miles down the road from where I was at. Not that that would have mattered, because neither of us were able to leave once we were there anyway. But I don't even know what exactly happened. He said something, and I automatically just blurted out through text messaging. So, it's like in the time, just my brain translating and my fingers putting it in, and then I hit send, and it's like, oh, what did you do? Right? And it was this, I feel like we're growing apart thing, right? And it was true. But I don't really, like, even right now, I still have a hard time really understanding what was going on in that moment, that was the thing that I sent, because, we're both at work. And I don't remember what we were even talking about. Sorry, I knocked one of the backs off of an earring earlier, and I thought I just did it again. But like all at once, we go from, I blurt out this thing, and then he goes quiet, and then he comes back with, I think we need to take a break. And we took a break for 2 weeks, right? And in the first couple days of that was when I found out this friend had committed suicide. So I'm sure there's more meaning to the way things stacked up with all of that, because I feel like it was the friend was one of those people that we had a bunch of psych classes together. We were both in the psych program, and we met during marching band. We both marched cymbals, and we both felt out of our league in that whole marching band experience, because of all the people that were actually, legitimate musicians that and going to school for music, and we're just kind of like in the way or whatever, right? But we talked a lot online, but there was this, this actually might be part of it with the Bible study stuff, where I was trying to force myself to be the good girl and the good church girl mindset. And he didn't outright say that he was gay, but he kept talking about his friend, and one day he said he was going to bring his friend to class, and his friend came to class, and his friend was awesome. And I loved both of them. But there was this disconnect because there was that part of me that was trying to fit in the religious space and trying to make sense. Okay, so that's something that's I've always kind of struggled with, as far as, you know, like the whole choosing to be gay. Like, I've never thought that was the thing, because my cousin, I knew was going to be the one of us that was gay when he was an infant. So for me, that alone says it's not a choice, right? Just the fact that I knew from that early on with him that he was going to be the one, and I was right? And it was like one of those things, like pretty much the whole family knew it, I think, by the time he was 3, except for maybe his mom and dad, because they were so deeply entrenched in the church stuff. But then, when it finally, when he finally came out, then it was finally like, now it was like that, finally, right? Okay, we all knew it. But like, since I was trying to make sense of that thought and yet still fit with the religious shit that was getting piled on top, it was like, I feel like that guy probably would have been easily one of my best friends had I not been blocked from being able to truly be a friend. But I feel like a lot of that too is also that blocking myself from being able to receive love, receive the good quality connections, because I was always blocking myself, okay, I started to do a video the other day. I think it was the one that I ended up deleting, but I was talking about, that idea of being othered, right? So I've mentioned on here many times that it's like, in every space that I've ever been, at some point I find myself in this other situation, right? So like, the thing specifically, honestly, I don't remember the exact thing recently that I was thinking of this on. But something came up where I was forced to see the situation. It's like, I can understand this side of the argument, but then I hear somebody else say the other side of it, and it's like, I understand where they're coming from too. I get both both of these ways of being, right? But also, while being able to see both sides of the argument, I feel like that generally will lead both sides to kind of shunning you at some degree, because you still see something that the other side is saying, so therefore you're not completely like us. Just that weird balance of being the in-between space and seeing two different points of views and fully being able to respect and appreciate them, but not be able to see. That's the biggest thing, is I've never been able to formulate the way of communicating that I can see both sides of it without either side at some level shutting me down, because I said I can see some aspect of what the other side is saying, right? So it's like that whole, just that space of being in the in between and the trying, but like the point of that is like, I feel like it's been, yes, at many levels it's been a burden at times, because it's really hard to navigate that space, right? And it's often amounted to this feeling othered in every space that I've been in at some level, right? But then it's also, at this deeper level, a gift, because it's a means of, once I figure out how to do it, building a bridge between two differing ways of looking at things, right? Like, that's supposed to be the point in this thing that I'm able to do, but I've always just allowed myself to get shut down because I don't I don't speak clearly. My thoughts get really muddied and it's very difficult to communicate. So a lot of times when I try to stand the middle ground, it doesn't come out very nice, or it doesn't come out as honestly, a lot of times I feel like it kind of comes across like I'm a dumbass and don't know what I'm talking about. So it's like, what do you do with that? If that's the only way that, if every time I open my mouth and try to talk and, somebody doesn't want to hear me because I said I can understand this part of what this other person is talking about, and they see it as a slight to their side, then my brain gets, further frazzled, and then what the fuck am I trying to do? What the fuck am I trying to say? And I can't communicate very clearly, and now it's a hot mess, and I don't know how to talk to anybody. So it was always just safer to, shut down and go do my own thing. And I don't know why I ended up there. No, the church and the other side. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Although on that end, it has helped immensely, realizing that church is actually the thing that's gotten in the way of me being able to communicate with more people with a better sense of clarity, because it's, generally the thing that's muddied everything for me. It's like, I can see the fact that I was 15 when my youngest cousin was born. And, I babysat that kid all the time. All my cousins, I was 12 when the oldest of the cousins was born. My brother and I were substantially older than all the rest of the cousins. So when the oldest of the next bunch of cousins was born, I was 12 and my brother was 15. When her brother, who is the youngest, was born, I was 15, my brother was 18, right? So it's like we had this big gap, which, interestingly, is actually the same way it worked for when my brother and I were born, and the age difference with our aunts, our mom's sisters, because the one that's closest to me in age was 15 when I was born. And the one that I talked to more often, it was 18 when I was born. So it's like, there was a gap there too, right? So it's like, we've always been as close to the aunts as we were to the cousins. Probably more so, really, because, more so, just because there was such a gap, right? But I babysat my cousins all the time. But then, yeah, to be around the youngest and know he's gay, since he was like an infant. That always, that always meant something, right? That, like, and to me, the biggest thing that meant was it's not a choice. So whatever you're learning in this church situation, like from the church people that's telling you it's anything else, it's like that doesn't, it doesn't work, right? It doesn't mesh with what I've experienced in my lifetime. But because I was trying to fit myself, I was trying to squeeze myself down into this little box, it just was a hot mess. I was trying to force myself to believe things that I already knew I didn't believe, but because that seemed to be what was the acceptable way of being, all that ended up happening was, yeah, I had some okay friends along the way, but I feel like if there hadn't been that block, that guy probably would have been one of my best friends. But because there was that block, and we had a lot of conversations about that kind of stuff too. And I was telling him, it's like, I know it's like, I know it's not a choice, because my life has demonstrated that it's not a choice for the people that I have encountered, like at least for the ones that I'm related to, right? But then to be in this other space and, them forcing the idea that it is, and it's like, it's not working, right? But going back to that, I never fit into the church way of being anyway. I tried hard to, and it just kind of made the whole thing muddier, really. And I was thinking about that too the other day, because, there was a video I did not that long ago where I talked about, like, we went to church when I was younger, but I don't feel like it wasn't something that I remember doing regularly. And then I was thinking about it, it's like, we were mainly the Christmas and Easter ones back then. We did go other times, but not a lot. So that's probably where part of that gap is. However, it was enough where some of that programming still gets rooted in. Which is why, there's been times that I've struggled so much with separating out of that and moving away from it. But yeah, it was just, I don't know. This is definitely not anywhere near what I thought I was going to be talking about today. And now I don't even know if I want to go that route, because I'm already at 37 minutes. I've been trying to tone them down lengthwise some, so it's not as long, but I don't know. Anyway, let's just see if I can figure out how I got there. Because I feel like that connection, I feel like, because that was something that always sat with me really hard too, was the fact that I'm pretty confident that guy would have been one of my best friends had I not had the resistance to being okay with it, because of this other group that I was spending all this time with. And it's not like, I really never gave any of them a chance to say or do otherwise, I guess. It just always kind of felt like it wouldn't be okay. Like, to bring him in those spaces. I don't know. But that was one of those things. The point of that tangent started from the breakup with the dude that I thought I was going to marry. And then I found out this guy committed suicide in that time frame. So it was just kind of like a really confusing time, I guess, on that end. And like, that's a thing that's kind of a weird connection too, is like the part of where my ex and I think started really growing apart was there was once again that urge to try to squeeze myself back into the church mindset and way of being. Like, his mom went to church all the time, and I loved his mom. Honestly, she felt more like a mom to me than, the mom. And, so I started trying to, well, I mean, if we want to just get straight to it, I guess, part of that connection, like, I was still going to, I don't know how regularly I was going to church. I think fairly regularly back then when I met him, because all my undergrad years were mainly filled with church stuff. In Campus Crusade, and I was trying to figure out somewhere where I fit desperately. And I tried a bunch of things, right? So I tried the Southern Baptist group, which was the Baptist Collegiate Ministry. And that was probably, I had some good friends in that space. But at the same time, it's like that's probably where a lot of the dissonance came in at. But then at one point I went to, I had a friend that I graduated from here with. We ended up both going to Ball State, and I don't even know how we reconnected. But at one point I was like, I went running with her. And the first, like, she had always been into running. And for some reason, I went running with her. And the first time I went running with her, I think we were talking enough that I stayed out of my head. And I didn't realize how tired, or I didn't have the opportunity to talk myself into thinking I was like extremely tired and I can't do this, and next thing I know, it's like we've run 2 miles and I didn't even think about it. And she was like, you did really good for never having run before, because like weren't like slowing down or taking a break or anything. And then the next time we went into it, it's like, it might have been because she drew attention to it and said how far like we'd actually gone. And then like the next time, like, I couldn't do anything. It's like I was, nope. Run a little bit, I need to slow down. Run a little bit, I can't run. It's just like, I think we only went like a couple times, because the first time was great, but then the second time I psyched myself out of it. And yeah, but I think she went with me to like this Pentecostal group. Don't even know how I found that one, but we went to a thing and it was kind of interesting. The place, okay, I don't remember the church that I started going to with the Bible study friends. But I'm wanting to say at one point, I think there were some non-denominational things. Non-denominational, and yet it's still technically a denomination. It still kind of fits in there. It's just more. Anyway. But yeah, like my senior year, I ended up living in this house that was through the American Baptist Association. So it's just like this whole weird amalgamation. Is that the right word? It's just like this weird group of different things that I tried. And honestly, the American Baptist group was the group that I was the closest to. but that's because I was living there. And I think a big part of that was, it wasn't that anybody was necessarily American Baptist, except for like the pastor, the house pastor. That was kind of the angle that he presented the teachings to us from. And I'm thinking about my he was my religious studies. Okay, so he was my professor for a couple different religious studies classes, and he ended up being my academic advisor. And I love that dude. He was awesome. He was like a former Southern Baptist preacher, turned college professor. And that dude was awesome. I've talked about him on here before too. He was the one that I would sit in his classes and he would say the things that it's like they would just like, it's like they would light me up in a way, right? So it's like the one thing that he said more than anything, and it was kind of when I was starting to lean more into the idea of writing as something that I was meant to do. He would always say, write books, make millions, and change the paradigms of the world. And it's like every time he said it was just like the way he said it, and he would always, he probably looked at other people when he would say the things, but that was something that he would say that a lot when he was looking at me, and it was just like, yeah, and like it just was one of those things that really, I guess was, sun's peeking around the tree now. There we go. I don't know, like it was just the thing that I needed to take root, right? So it was one of those things, it was like this lofty idea back then. Although I started, and I think that was the biggest thing, was him saying it was something where it really sit in with me, and it was like, planting a seed, right? So it's like this idea of writing, this idea of write books, make millions, change the paradigms of the world, right? And it's like, yeah, I like all of those things, let's do that one. Right? But it was just something that like it just lit me up. And I remember, like, I talked to him about being my advisor, and he was a little hesitant because I had the dual major. I was majoring in psychology and religious studies. And he said, I can help you on the religious studies side of things, but he said, I feel like you need, somebody in the psychology field to guide you better on that one. It's like, I was just like, nope, I'm it's like, we'll figure it out enough. It'll be fine. I was just really into, I liked listening to him, like just the things he would talk about. He had a good energy, right? And it was fun to listen to the things that he had to share, and the things that he had to say, and the things that, sit in, and then next thing you know, it's like giving you hope for this other thing that you hadn't maybe previously considered. And then suddenly, that's like the thing, right? Like writing is the thing that I'm supposed to be doing. But yeah, I feel like that was really one of the start points, right? Because the other thing on the start point is, like, I knew back in middle school that writing was somehow a part of it. Because back then I took, in middle school we were required to do these clubs. And one of the clubs that I did was poetry. And I loved that, right? So I had this little composition notebook that I would write my little short, little 2 stanza poems on there. Really lame, like, 7th grade kid stuff, right? But I loved it. And so I had this composition notebook, and I would write my little poems in there, and then I'd have my colored pencils, and I'd doodle little flowers and rainbows and weird shit. Like, it's nothing complicated, because I've never been, like, a big artist or whatever, but it's like, I can doodle. And sometimes it can turn out roughly like I want it to. But that was the thing. I started in 7th grade, and it was one of those things, like, I got really into it. But then in 8th grade, what happened was my mom was babysitting this little girl, and her brother was one of my bullies, right? And at a time, that kid was the only one my mom was babysitting. Her brother, my 8th grade year would have been his junior year in high school, because he was the same grade as my brother. And part of the reason he was a bully was because, my mom had babysat him when in his younger days too, and saw some of the dumb shit that came up was because he was around, right? And so he shows up one day to pick up his little sister because his mom's working late, and I didn't know he was there, and I came into the room, and it was just that, there's always the look where, people think they know something about you. They think they have something on you, right? That look, that always just kind of followed me around. And he showed up with that look on his face, and I just kind of crumbled, right? So, like, immediately, I went back to the bathroom, and it's like, I ended up spending a good chunk of the day, or of the afternoon, crying, and doing what my self-harm thing back then was, I was really bad about beating myself in the head with my hairbrush. So, like, if I got really upset about anything, it's like that was just what I would do, because it was something that, prove it, right? But yeah, like that moment, it went from everything was all fine and dandy, and then he shows up, and then, he has that damn look on his face, and then just everything. And one of the things that I did in that space, because it immediately activates that sense of hating myself all over again. And it's like, I took this poetry journal that I had loved so much, and I just, like, carved big X's through the pages. And I'm surprised I didn't burn it or get rid of it or anything, but I might have since then. I don't think so. I think I still have it somewhere. I know I've been burning a lot of stuff that's got icky energy attached to it, and that I don't really want in my space anymore. But I think that was one of those things that, since it had started me on the writing thing, and it was something that I really enjoyed for a time, I don't think I was able to bring myself to get rid of it. Because I know I have seen it in the past 5 years. I don't know if I might have disconnected with it since then, but I don't think I did. The stuff... Okay. With the religious studies advisor, and the right books make millions, change the paradigms of the world. Excuse me. I was always, that was a big thing, right? So that got me back into, I guess having the hope, holding the space for writing as something that I was meant to do. But I was still afraid to really lean into it very much. Although I did minor in creative writing, because so I double majored and double minored. My majors were religious studies and psychology, and my minors were creative writing and interpersonal relations. And that one was pretty much just a blow-off thing, because I had so much other stuff that fit the requirements, they were so vague that it's like, oh yeah, this will count, this will count, this will count. Okay, hey, since I've already taken these classes to fulfill my psych major, but they also work for this other thing, then bam, we'll just add a minor on there too, and maybe it'll make it better. I don't know, or just make it more expansive, or I don't know, whatever. Anyway, but yeah. I am gonna have to hustle it though, because it's only 5 and it's not dark yet, but I am at the cemetery and I don't want to get locked in. So I don't know. I know the gates technically are supposed to close, or I think the cemetery is open from dawn to dusk, and I just don't want to take a chance on getting stuck. Even though there is a drive right next to this that I could easily, it's always open. It's a private drive, but it would get me to the road. So I wouldn't be stuck. Anyway, doesn't even matter. We're kind of on another tangent again. But yeah, like the creative writing, it's like it was kind of the sticking my toe in the water, if you will. 5555. Because I had this thing that kept coming up, but that I was afraid to really lean into, so yeah, when I was in seminary, there were a couple of things that happened, and one of those, since I have talked so much about my religious BS today, since I went to seminary, which I actually, my sophomore year in undergrad, since I was leaning into the churchy stuff more at that time frame, I had this thought that I was going to go to seminary. And I started looking at seminaries at that point in time. And, the one that came to mind was Indiana Wesleyan, because it's connected to the Methodist Church, and the church that I went to in this town was Methodist Church. So, United Methodist. So, that seemed logical, right? And then for whatever reason, it was one of those things where I found myself wandering down the rabbit hole and getting very involved in reading through the information for the school. And one of the things that I came across was talking about how social dancing is okay, right? As long as it's a group dance at a wedding, but you cannot dance with like a partner one-on-one. Like that would, like, you could get thrown out of school if you were caught dancing with somebody that was not your spouse. All this crap. And it's just like, I remember like this sort of rage that just passed through my system, and it was like, you mean to tell me that I'm responsible enough to make the decision to go on to even further my education, but I could get kicked out of school for making the decision to dance with somebody that I'm not married to? It's like, that doesn't sit right with me, right? And of course, back in those days, that was in the time frame that I got really into big band and swing music, and found out there was like a swing club on campus, and I was going to these club meetings and dancing, right? And like it was a fun time, because you get with, like, I didn't have to know shit, but there were a couple, like some of the people that I would dance with that were so good as leads that I didn't have to know anything. They were just like throwing me around, and it's like, I have no idea what just happened, but it was really fun. So like, since I was into swing club, and then I read this thing about how that won't fly for this seminary experience. It's like, screw you. Right? So that was the big thing that made me walk away from the seminary idea at that point in time. Obviously I went back to it, but that was sophomore year. I was in the dorm living with that roommate. We would stay up late a lot of nights and just like talking about everything, and like she was my best friend that year, and it was like awesome. The year before, I ended up rooming with somebody I didn't know, and it was less than ideal. And she said something and was kind of throwing her weight around at the last couple days of school, and I went off on her. And granted, it was petty shit too, because the thing that, like, I think I was listening to music or something, and she decided she was getting ready for bed, and I don't know, she just wasn't sitting right with me, and I think we'd been bickering. A big part of what it was she had a boyfriend, and he was part of the ROTC program, and he was a nice guy. I had no problems with him or their relationship, except the time that she brought him into the room and was making out with him hot and heavy, and flat out said she forgot I was in the room. It's like, and because that whole speaking up for myself and using my voice thing wasn't something that I was taught to do. I was taught very much to not draw attention to myself, right? Obviously that didn't go over well. So I had my bed lofted, and it was where I was sitting at my desk and couldn't, like, my loft was in the way, and her bed was at the other end by the door. So if the lights had been on, I would have been able to see over there, but I still had like some stuff trying to block it. But I had like a freaking like rug or a towel or something that I think it was my rug for when I went to the shower. And I had that moved over, so I couldn't see anything. But I was talking to one of my friends on Instant Messenger, and it's like, I don't know how far they're going to go over there, but it's really uncomfortable being here, right? And like, if I would have left, I would have had to walk past them anyway. I didn't know what they were doing. I didn't know how hot and heavy they were and involved they were getting and all this stuff. But I was also raised where I couldn't speak up, and so I'm like pissed off and venting to a couple of my friends on Instant Messenger. And the next day, I think what she said was, it was nice of me to put the rug over there so she and her boyfriend had some privacy. It's like, bitch, that's not what that was for. So I didn't have to see anything. But she's like completely vapid and oblivious to the fact that's really inappropriate when you have a roommate there, and you're just gonna like, I mean, not quite fuck your boyfriend, because she's into the religious shit too, but yeah, like there were a whole lot of hard feelings. And it got to a point where, I was also raised very passive aggressive. So he would come in the room, and they'd be doing their little flirty bullshit before or while he's over standing by the door or whatever, and I started finding ridiculous music to blast at them, and 333 one of them was Cletus T. Judd, I Can Smell Your Breath. So they're trying to make out by the door, and I turned this on and I turned it up, and he's like, I feel like you're trying to tell me something. And I said, I really am. He kind of laughed, and it was no big deal, but there were hard feelings building right in that time frame, because I wasn't raised to speak up, but also that's very uncomfortable, and I did not appreciate having to be in that space either. So like, my communication skills sucked. No doubt there. But it just sucked. So anyway, so I got to a point where I started getting increasingly spiteful, and so I'm listening to music one night, and she's kind of ordering me to do things, And at one point, she sits up and she's all indignant and says, "If you don't turn that radio down now, I'm going to the RA." And I just snapped. And I went off about like every slight that I'd, registered all throughout the year and not said anything about, and she just kept doing it. And, and she ended up getting me something as a going away kind of present. I guess we were going our separate ways, and she got me a gift. And it was like this desk lamp that had little plastic fish and you could put water in it. It was cute. But I think it was because she felt bad because I went off, and she finally realized that that wasn't a good situation. But the next year when I ended up with the girl that I met in Bible study, and we bonded and had a connection before, so it was immensely more helpful when I was living with her, and we were talking all hours of the night regularly because we were friends. So no, that's where it came from. The pictures, damn it. It's like forever ago, but that started because I was looking through pictures. So obviously I'll keep pictures with my roommate, but like a lot of the people I don't need to keep. She's like, who are these people? Or I mentioned the counterpart name following me around my entire life. One of those spaces was undergrad because, so I mentioned that the guy I dated, my first boyfriend, his little brother was named Richard, right? And I remember thinking, that seems like a really big name for this kid to not have any nicknames. But okay, whatever, right? So I'm not really super close with his family or anything, but I just remember thinking that. So that was one of those spaces. But then, so me and that guy ended up breaking up sophomore year in high school, or in college, right? We started dating sophomore year in high school, broke up sophomore year in undergrad, and it was, because I knew he wasn't the one for me, but at the same time, it was very not safe for me to exist because of like the bullies and whatnot. We ended up staying together for a long time because he was at least a safe space for me in that time. So that was basically, we broke up 3 times. There was one time it was for like an hour or 2, and I was like, nope, can't do it. And then the next time was for like a day or 2, and then the last one was a month. And then after that it was like his little sister ended up being in my section and marching band, and it's like, she's going to make my life a living hell if me and her brother are not together, right? So then it was for my sanity, because I was, it was my junior year, and I was the section leader, and she was in my section this time around. It's like, this ain't gonna work if I'm not dating her brother. So, me and her brother got back together, and then it was, this is a safe space to be. And, honestly, one of the reasons that we stayed together for those last 2 years was I didn't want to be another girl to have a crush on Tyler, right? Tyler was, he was the battery captain. I was the pit captain. And I always loved this dude. He was a great guy. We had a whole lot. It's one of those things where it always felt like there was a deeper connection than the one that was being played out in the physical existence, right? But it's like, I don't want to end up just being another girl with a crush on Tyler. So for safety's sake, and to make sure that I stay focused on what I'm doing otherwise, and the drumline stuff, and not having any kind of feelings for that dude. It was like, it's safe here. We're just going to chill. We're just going to stay together, right? So then my freshman year in undergrad, his senior year in high school, we were still together. He went to Ball State, and then we broke up. And it was one of those things where it's like, he has to have somebody else or like another connection where this isn't a thing that I can go running back when things get scary. It's like, I cannot keep doing that because I know we're not meant to be together. But at the same time, because he's been a safe space and because I have had the history of hiding, right? And like always shrinking myself to fit in environments that I, probably just shouldn't have been in rather than trying to shrink to fit. He ended up getting involved with a girl in my same damn hall. It's like, of all the fucking places, right? You end up getting together with the girl that she was on the 3rd floor, I was on the 1st floor. It's like, this is stupid. Meanwhile, his dorm was way at the other end of the campus, but yeah. Of course, he was dating the one in my dorm, so yeah. But yeah, and that was kind of this jacked up experience too, because when we met, he and I were still together, and she was like really nice and wanted to be my friend. So we were talking, and then after he and I broke up, I would get really pissed at something with him because of her, because she's in the same dorm, and I would like start yelling at her on instant messaging or whatever, and then next thing I know, we'd end up in the freaking girls' lounge and talking and laughing about God knows what. So she ended up being, interestingly enough, one of my good friends for a couple years, and they were dating for a couple years, so that was an awkward thing, and we ended up just not, like, if they were together, I was not around. If me and her were hanging out, like we went to lunch a few times on campus even, it's just like, he wasn't around, right? But it's still just one of those awkward experiences anyway. But yeah, so, but her older brother, one of the ones that's in some of these pictures that I came across the other day, and, talked myself into believing I had a crush on him. I didn't. He's like very much not my type, but it was this name that kept coming back up. And it's like, okay, so there was another girl in the Bible study that I was in my sophomore year that her husband was in the Army, in the Marines. And so he was away for that, and she was going to school, right? So she would talk about her hubby, and it's like, she would say his name was Rick, and every time she said the name, it's like, I got this swoony feeling. It's like, what the fuck is with this? It's like, I don't know the dude that she's even talking about, but for some reason, every time she says his name, I get the swoony feeling, and it's like, what is that? Right? So I ended up, kind of misdirecting it into this crush situation that, it really wasn't. But because I was trying to, fit myself into this other space, I talked myself into believing that I had a crush on him. And I got a couple pictures of him from the dance, and like, his friend was honestly more attractive than he was, but not that he was a bad looking dude. It's just nowhere near my type, right? But then, like this whole thing, like the fact that he was her older brother, but he also had this name. It's like, what is this name again? It's always this name, right? Like, it followed me around when I was little, right? So my mom was babysitting one kid. He was a few years younger than me, but his name was Ricky, and his dad's name was Rick. Lots of weird stuff with that family, though. But yeah, and my cousin that was my best friend in the earliest days, her dad, his name was Richard, but he went by Dick. Right? I just remember I never liked that one. It's like, ugh. It's like, of all the nicknames you come up with, that's what you went with. Okay, cool. But yeah, like, you know, those were early spaces where it was there. And then I ended up dating this guy for 4 years, who's little brother, you know, and then as I'm friends with my ex's new girlfriend, you know, then her brother, you know, and just this other guy or this other girl from Bible study talking about her husband and the swoony feeling. It's like, what the fuck is going on? Right? So it's just one of those spaces where it's like there was a lot of things that kept pointing me to this name, but it's like I didn't know anybody with this. I mean, I knew several people with the name, but their relevancy I didn't really understand. You know, and I fucking spent a lot of time in my younger years watching the old black and white TV shows, especially I Love Lucy. So yeah, anyway. This was kind of all over the place today. I mean, it's not a bad thing. It's definitely, I did not talk at all about the movie that I was going to talk about and the little theme that I wanted to talk about. But maybe that's just for tomorrow, so, because I'm not going there at 5:55. I'm not going there at an hour and 15 minutes in. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up so I can get out of here before it does get dark, because I don't want to be stuck in the cemetery, even if I wouldn't technically be stuck, because there is a road. Even if it's a private drive, I can still do it. Yeah, excuse me. I'm going to stop talking. So, as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.